So in this video, we're going to look at double inequalities. And notice that we have two inequalities. All right, so we're going to treat this, though, like one problem as we work through it. So one of the tricks I tell people to do is to cover up this left-hand inequality. Pretend that this negative 10 and this less than symbol isn't here. So if this were covered up over here and you just had 5x minus 5 is less than or equal to 10, we would solve it like the previous problems we had, and we would add 5 to both sides, to this side and to that side. Well, since we have actually 3 sides, we're just going to add 5 to all 3 sides. So here, we're going to add 5 to the left-hand side, the thing that's before our first inequality. We're going to add 5 to the middle of the two inequalities, and we're going to add 5 to the right-hand side. And when we do that, let's notice what we have. On the left, negative 10 and positive 5 gives us negative 5. In the middle, we still have 5x. Our 5's cancel. And then on the right, let me go ahead and put in my less than or equal to. 10 plus 5 gives me 15. All right, so last step, again, let's just pretend that this part right here is not there, and all I have is 5x is less than or equal to 15. To finish that off, I would just divide by 5. 5, of course, would not flip the inequality because it's a positive. All right, so let's divide every single piece by 5, not just what's over here. So if I divide every piece by 5, on the left, I'm going to get a negative 1. In the middle, I'm just going to get x. And again, let's get that little less than or equal to symbol. I'm going to have 3. Now, I want you to notice that it's important to realize when you divide by whatever you're dividing by, in this case, we were dividing by 5 to get it away from the x, it did not flip the sign. Even though that's a negative, it's what we divide by that determines whether or not we flip our symbol around. And we divided by a positive. All right, now let's graph this thing. And again, I'll use this draw feature and try my best to be straight. A little bit windy, but that's okay. All right, now we want to put from negative 1 all the way up to 3 on our graph. So I'm going to put negative 1 here. And then will come 0. And these should be the same distance apart. I'm just not very good at drawing on the computer. Okay, now let's notice that next to the negative 1, there's no equal sign. And we want to think of our x as being sandwiched in between these two values. So our two symbols that we have, our open and closed brackets, are going to face one another. So let me change colors here. No equal sign. We're going to have an open bracket that opens toward the 3. Okay. Now the 3 actually has an equal sign next to it, so we're going to have a closed bracket on the 3. And I missed, but we get the idea. And then x is everything in between, so we are going to shade all of the number line in between these two. All right, now from that graph, it's easy to read off our interval notation. Reading from left to right, our interval starts with an open bracket at negative 1, comma, and goes to the right side to a closed bracket at 3. And there's the interval notation. All right, so let's take a look at this next one. Let's solve it and graph it in the same fashion. So remember a moment ago, we pretended that the left side didn't exist. So if we were solving negative 2x plus 8 is less than or equal to 12, we would subtract 8 on both sides. But let's subtract 8 on all 3 sides, to the left, to the middle, and to the right. Okay, let me get out of the draw feature here. And I will subtract 8 from the left. Subtract 8 in between the two inequalities. And subtract 8 from the right. All right, so I'm left with negative 24 minus 8 is negative 32. Let me get my less than or equal to symbol. I'm still left with the negative 2x. The 8's cancel. And then let me get that symbol again. And then 12 minus 8 gives me 4. Okay, now just as before, if we pretend that this part over here is not there, to solve negative 2x is less than or equal to 4, we would divide by negative 2. Dividing by negative 2 flips our inequality, but I'll do that in the next step. So let's divide by negative 2. Okay, so when I do that, negative 32 divided by negative 2 is 16. Remember I said we've got to flip our inequality. That means we've got to flip both of them. So this will become a greater than or equal to. We'll just have x. Flip that second one as well. Greater than or equal to. And then 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. Now, very important. When we have double inequalities, they must both be pointing in the same direction, never opposite of one another. So notice these are pointing in the same direction. Now, this is rather weird because we're not used to having the bigger number on the left and the smaller number on the right. Notice up here it was the smaller number on the left and the bigger number on the right. Well, let's flip this around. To flip this around, let's put the negative 2 on the left and the 16 on the right. Our x is still in the middle, but notice that the inequality points at the negative 2. So when we put an inequality right here, we want it to point at the negative 2. So, whoops, well, I meant for it to be right here. So let's try that again. So notice that's pointing at the negative 2. And notice that right here, the inequality is open to the 16. So when I put 1 here, I want it to be open to the 16. So notice what we really did when we flipped the order of the numbers around, we also flipped our symbols back around too. All right, and of course they're both now pointing in the same direction, which is toward the smaller number, and we should always be pointing toward the smaller number. Okay, so let's draw our graph. And since these are so far apart, negative 2 and 16, I'm going to go by 2's, just so I fit them all on the graph. And we can do that. Nothing stops us from, we don't necessarily have to go by 1. So we'll have negative 2. Better put these closer to get together. 0, 2, 4. Well, my drawing is just wonderful. Okay, so I had to stop and redraw just so I got them all on there. Not very pretty, but we get the idea. All right, so let's go to negative 2. We have an equal sign right here. So that means I need the square bracket pointing inward toward the 16. And then on the right side, 16 also has an equal sign right there with it. So let's point that one inward. And I meant to change these to red. So let's just do our shading in red. In between will be the shading. All right, so now looking at that, interval notation will start at negative 2 with that square bracket, and it will end at 16 with the square bracket. And my 16 doesn't look great, but you get the idea there.